So thank you very much. It is the disruptor stage, so I'm sorry I am disrupting your lunch, because if it is as good as yesterday's, you're going to put in lots of calories, because I definitely need to go for a run after this convention. So I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Michelle Armstrong from Trust Your Supplier. Surprisingly, it says it on the board. But just to let you know a little bit about who we are, and then I'm going to introduce my esteemed colleagues. So Trust Your Supplier, if you don't know it, it's basically an information network built on blockchain. So the first thing everybody says to me when they say blockchain, oh my God, Michelle, is that crypto? We are certainly not crypto. But from our perspective, the crypto that you would think about from a blockchain perspective is a digital identity of a supplier. So what do I mean with a digital identity? It's a portable digital identity with a unique identifier with key firmographic information that has been validated and continuously monitored, not scraped, it is validated information, over 400 million validated suppliers within the network. We then work with great strategic partners. A lot of them are actually here, not that I paid them, I promise I didn't, but a lot of strategic partners that actually then provide augmented information about that supplier. It's continuously monitored, and that's the most important thing. For us, the value, though, of that digital identity, and we'll talk about it a little bit more because I don't want to sell myself here, the application can do that for me, is the value is it's not just about having third-party information. And I'm really glad we followed that last speech, because I thought it was really fascinating to understand. It's not just about having each of these augmented providers on our network. It's how we can synergize the information between them. We recognise that at the moment, the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act for Germany, as we mentioned just in the last disruptor, that really does signify ESG requirements, but it also highlights requirements with regards to human rights. We've got a massive cybersecurity compliance act that's coming out in Asia at the moment. It comes out in January of 2024. It's huge, but you can't look at that in silo without looking at cybersecurity, ESG, and human rights. So what Trust Your Supplier are trying to do is merge all of that information together with fantastic peers. And by the way, some of these peers have got competitive advantage against us. That's not what collaboration is about. It's about actually synergizing that collaboration to look at the issue that the actual consumer has and to try and understand how we can benefit their supply chain. That's critical for me. I've done this for quite a long time. If we don't work together, then there's always going to be an element of master data inadequacies or erroneous information. If we don't work together, we're going to miss something in cybersecurity. Talked to somebody earlier this week, just give you a little bit of example. We were looking at a breast pump. Ladies, gents, we were looking at a breast pump. But we were looking at the pump, and from a cybersecurity perspective, no issue. We all want to work with this company. But actually, when you look at the PEPs and sanctions of it, there was a massive issue in that this product was being sold to a specific country where the birth rate had been reduced, but actually the import of this particular product had increased by over 80%. Why? There was a microchip inside the breast pump. So the microchip was being used for weapon management. If you'd only looked at cybersecurity in silo, you'd have never discovered that. So the synergies of working with all of our strategic partners within that digital identity is to understand predictive and prescriptive insights and to understand what's happening in our world today, okay? That's the reason why I think collaboration is extremely important. So I just want to introduce two phenomenal colleagues of mine. We first of all have Diarmuid from BT. BT are one of our advisory boards. From a Trust Your Supplier perspective, we would not have been anywhere without them. They are our senior advisory boards. They direct us in where we need to go within the landscape of the industry today. And I'm going to introduce, everybody knows Elouise Epstein. I'm going to introduce Elouise Epstein as my friend. Elouise and I talk about history. We are really into Irish politics, so that's really good. But I just want to make sure that she can see it from a different angle. It's not about where we are from a technology perspective, but it's how Elouise also sees how we collaborate together. So please, I'd like you to welcome Diarmuid. He is Irish, talks as fast as me, so apologies. And Elouise. So if we can just have a quick introduction, that'd be great.
Thank you, sir.
So, it'd be great if you could both introduce yourself, and I'm going to go with my fellow Irish person this time, Elouise. So, Diarmuid, it'd be really good if you could introduce yourself as BT Sourced, and I've got one question. I ask this all the time. So, we are in DPW, which is procurement, but for some strange reason, maybe it's not strange and I just don't know the answer, why did BT call themselves BT Sourced?
Thanks, Michelle. First and foremost, I think you're a natural on the stage, so
And before I go ahead, I am dressed in all black. That's no allegiance to the All Blacks that were playing on Saturday. I think it was a very, very, very bad choice of clothes this morning. So yeah, just introduce BT Source. So BT Source are a separate procurement entity, a separate company based out of Dublin, Ireland. So we support BT British Telecom in their procurement needs. We were set up 2.5 years ago, so we were very new. So when we started, we were very clear on two things. One, we had to leverage tech, and we had to think outside the box. So we have a mission statement, which is to leverage tech to source for a better future. If anyone follows our social channels, you will see it as a hashtag, we source for a better future. So you might see it and just looked over and forgotten about it. That is very important to us. And I'll break that down because to answer your question, we felt obviously the word procurement didn't bring forward our mission statement as well as it could. So let's break that down. So the hashtag is essentially the digital native aspect. We work with the best in the business, including yourselves from a digital perspective, and that's ingrained in our learnings and our culture. The we is the people aspect. So the trust we have in our people, the innovative people we have, the diversity. So we have 25, 26 nationalities in Dublin alone. Which is amazing. The source is the sourcing aspect of our products and services for British Telecom to connect for good, and for a better future is ingrained in how we see the future of procurement. So that's obviously the diversity, the supplier side, but also the digital side. So we'll touch on it later, I'm sure, in terms of we are one of the pioneers in developing a digital garage. So that is really key to what we do with yourselves and others. And also we look at predictive analytics. We have our own predictive and negotiation analytics team, a bunch of data sciences that have been taken from other industries and plopped essentially into a procurement world. So we're trying to push the boundaries and going back to your original question. So that's one of the main reasons why we feel the word procurement didn't fit. Essentially, it benefits our partners, it benefits our colleagues, and it benefits, I suppose, how we want to move forward as a procurement entity and also the industry.
So I'm going to take that response. And by the way, I'm really glad because I think for a lot of us, it's one of those key questions I'm always asked. Elouise, from your perspective, right? So if we think about how, we've answered that question and the fact that we do need all these synergies with all of these other augmented providers, integration providers, do you think procurement needs to be remarketed?
Oh, absolutely. Well, let me integrate what you said, Dermot, so my last book, I did a case study on BT Sourced, and it was so exciting and phenomenal what you all are doing in that T part of the BTS. You have really embraced technology in a way that others haven't, and I think I have a lot of things that irritate me, and one is procurement jargon. And I think we get too wrapped up in our own procurement jargon. And when we start to move to, I love your hashtags. I also like the Making Procurement Cool. I follow their socials. And I think that really resonates in that we just have to get beyond, we have to get out of our own way, because the business understands nothing about procurement, but we just kind of lob just a bunch of jargon at them. So.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because I think as well from a BT perspective, getting that transparency, working towards digital, identification, making sure our suppliers actually understand the benefit of the application and what it is that BT are doing, why they're doing it. Was blockchain a big part in your decision making?
Yeah, short answer is yes. Longer answer is, one of the key aspects of TOIS and what we've seen is the network aspect. There's networks in terms of other peers in the industry and branching out, as you said, those millions of suppliers that we reach into. What is really important to us, the blockchain enables that security and privacy for our suppliers and for ourselves. But also that, no surprise, our internal auditors, our category teams love it because they can look at the traceability at each aspect of the journey, essentially, and we can get alerts throughout that process. So what does that do? That drives the trust amongst our stakeholders in BT. We have many risk experts in there, and that's really important to drive that accountability. And what happens there, we can drive efficiencies, we can look at the process. So that was one of the 2 or 3 key elements of, I suppose, the blockchain element, which we see.
Can I take that one step further then? So from our perspective, one of the hardest things, and I'm sure everybody in this audience will say exactly the same, is how do we get our suppliers to adopt to a new strategy and to a new digital native blockchain who has got so many marketing backgrounds around the cryptocurrency area, and that's, as soon as I mention blockchain, that's the first thing people ask me. How, and by the way, you have been very successful. How has BT been able to challenge their internal teams, their external suppliers, and even their partners, to adopt into a process like TYS?
It was spoken about yesterday on a few occasions. There's many aspects. I think the one aspect I'd say is, have one vision, have one strategy. You can't let the tech and those capabilities take over. You have to essentially identify what the use case is. So we have a vision or a vision statement from a company perspective, but also we have a strategy and a vision from a digital perspective. A couple aspects of that is that we want to have the most digitally skilled procurement company globally. That's a statement of ours, a bold statement. We also look at, we want to adopt self-service across our business stakeholders and review that customer experience. We also want, related to TYS and what you guys do, is that we want to have those data points available within seconds. That's our vision, that's our statement. So we have some bold visionary statements that bring what we're doing and why we're doing it to the core of BT, and bringing our procurement team, number one, on the journey, but also our stakeholders as well.
So, Elouise, I'm going to ask you, because you've got a wealth of experience and you talk to everybody. I think I've seen you being picked and applauded all the way through this past couple of days. Question for you, where do you see supplier adoption at the moment? Because that's a massive area of collaboration. We need to make sure that not only my buyer is happy with me, my strategic partners see the benefit of actually joining us and providing business value to buyers, but it's not going to work unless the suppliers actually go, yeah, I'll join. What do you see, or where do you see the industry going with that?
Well, I think it's one of the great embarrassments of our profession, and we have several embarrassments, is that we make it so hard for suppliers to transact. And I have I've written a whole thing about supplier experience management. It's the drum I beat all the time. And I'll give you a great example. And I never stop beating the client with this example. I was invited to an RFP. It was Kearney, and for some reason they invited me. And so the first thing I did and I'll just say it was an Ariba sourcing event, or an event run Ariba. So I click on the link, and the first thing it asked me to do, it shows me 23 entities of Kearney. AT Kearney Inc., Kearney, blah, blah, blah. And I took a screenshot, and I never miss an opportunity to point this out to the client. That we won the work, actually. But I was like, how do I know which of the 23 Kearneys? I don't know. I don't think anybody at Kearney knows. So I just click randomly because I don't know what's going to happen. So, first of all, we have to, what the client is, they have to clean this up. That's their job. And that shows me that they don't care about suppliers. They don't care about us and probably the other firms that were responding to this RFP. So, if we want to incent suppliers, we can't just beat on the suppliers and tell them to do better. And I've got countless examples of that. And so we're very low at the maturity. And yet, not only do you make it painful to respond to the RFP, but all of a sudden now you're going to give me a cyber survey, a cybersecurity survey, you're going to give me a risk survey, a this survey, a that survey. It's just and I look at the last thing you want to do is send me a survey, because the first thing I'm going to do is rip it apart and write about it on LinkedIn or in a book.
Oh God, remember that, everybody. Yeah. Note it.
You can send it to my colleagues, but don't send it to me, because it will incense me. And so that's my point, is that why are we doing this work? It's just frustrating, the supply.
So and I'm glad you said that, because you and I have had this conversation many times. So we think that the most important element of TYS is the suppliers. And by the way, we're a supplier. I mean, TYS is a supplier on the application. You're a supplier. And in fact, Kearney is a supplier on TYS. And the one thing I always talk about when I'm talking to customers is, you need to get your firmographics right. You need to get your buyers right. That's great. But the supplier goes, yeah, but you're still going to ask me the same information that all of these other solutions are asking me. Okay, so where do you see, we're talking about this digital identity, this wallet, where a supplier has a portable wallet with a unique identifier that they can take to any application, that not only is there firmographic information, but it's how ESG they are, how cybersecurity they are, what's their sanctions, and it's continuously being updated. Where do you see that vision going?
So I'm 100% a big, huge believer in the digital wallet concept. I think that's the future. Because why am I going to spend the time for that one client, it was a pharma client, why am I going to go there and fix all of Kearney's data, only to have to go to another pharma client and input it there, and then when I go to a high-tech client and fix it there. And we could have, I used to talk about the LinkedIn for suppliers. You go one place and it would be a syndicated network. But I actually have evolved to realize that we as the supplier need to own our data. And if I'm gonna transact, I'm gonna give you all that data you could possibly want as a token, and then it will expire when our contract expires. Because I don't want you using my data once we're done, we're no longer in partnership. And too often, this is especially true for the source-to-pay platforms, they double dip. They charge the client to use the software, and then they charge for the insights that makes use of my data as the supplier. And so eventually, so I argue that suppliers should own their data, they should be compensated for their data, and by controlling it, they can pull it back at any time. By the way, this is what's happening in the consumer world. And globally, our citizenry over the next 10 years, data will become part of our human rights, our data. Like any data about me, I should own that or profit off of it, not just, I live in Silicon Valley, so anyway.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think you talked about the future of procurement, and digital wallet is in the future. I think, we would argue, and I'm sure you'd appreciate, we're in the future of procurement.
Yeah. We're here.
We're here. I think there's been countless discussions around, getting a seat at the table. We're at that table. So when it comes to supplier onboarding and supplier identities, we just need to grasp that opportunity. Not in the future, but and really grasp it today. And obviously, TOAS is key to that for us as well.
So, and I'm going to follow on from that. So, one of the things that really excites me about BT Source is you have this digital garage. And by the way, I'm a really proud member of being on the digital garage. And you get us all to meet regularly, and we all are. And Cyril especially is pushing boundaries to make us all think outside the box. But he also makes sure that we're all collaborating and going, all of you collectively are using master data, firmographic information. You should be using that together as a digital garage. Now, I find that's mind-blowing just that anybody is actually forward-thinking like that. It might be good for the audience to explain just what the digital garage is and what you're trying to do with that, if that'd be okay.
Yeah. Perfect. We see, and I'm sure others appreciate it, have looked at us. The Digital Garage is essentially a gateway to innovation. So it's a gateway, an opportunity, and a vehicle for us to fail and learn. So what do? We are very clear in identifying key use case problems. That's our first step. We identified that with TOAS a couple of years ago in terms of the onboarding. So we look at the use case problem. We start from scratch. We map out what the process should be. And when we're clear on what the use case is and the value and opportunity and KPI we want to identify, we essentially go to the market. So that's where we spend a lot of our time speaking with vendors, startups. That's why I'm here. And 50%, 60% of my time is speaking to vendors on an ongoing basis. Once we have that, we essentially do a pilot with clear value KPIs of what we want to get out of it. And if we feel there's a clear value to said solution, for example, with TOAS, we would look to roll that out. So that de-risks the adoption with that tool, within BT, for example.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
So, they were the first and the pinnacle. I have heard more clients in the last 2 days talk about their digital garages. It's absolutely a trendsetter.
And taking from that, as a member of that digital garage, as I said, and I think there's a few in here, again, not that they've been paid to join the session today, but, the importance of being able to have one set of data, I think, is the most important thing. It's going back to what we just described. I want my supplier to do that. I, as a supplier, want to do it once. I, as a supplier, want to be able to identify as an ESG or a diversity or a women-owned organisation, which we are. That's critical for me. How has your digital garage members actually come together? How do they feel about that collaboration?
I might ask you the question in a minute, but I'll just give you one clear example just to kind of hopefully give a pretty short enough answer. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, a bit backwards, go forward, we're very clear on driving the digital IQ that is mentioned in our team. So we want to drive forward what is our mission statement as a company and what is our digital strategy. So we're really clear on making that message clear and within our culture. A few weeks ago, we had a digital week internally. We called it My Digital Native Company Week. We had talks from people externally of BT, internally, all related to each aspect of our digital strategy. So we're very clear on making sure that we reaffirm what our strategy is, not just externally, but internally. And to answer your question, we had all our vendors, all our digital partners come to us for 2 or 3 days a week. The energy, the collaboration, I know you were pretty excited afterwards in terms of what is the integration possibilities and partnerships that TYS can leverage on ourselves. So I think that was just one key example. I picked up the phone, I had a conversation with everyone, and within 3 or 4 weeks, you were all there in the office. So that was just testament to what we as a collective, want to move forward within BT and the industry, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's a powerful statement to actually make. And you're right. As soon as I left that Thursday, I was on the phone to about 4 or 5 of them, going, "Let's discuss this. This is an opportunity for all of us to actually get on board." One of the other things, though, I think both of you are, been part of the TYS journey on is, we do have an advisory board, and we also, as a vertical, a telecommunications vertical, a pharma vertical, we meet competitors meet together. They're synergizing what they want to ask their suppliers. So again, they're only asking it once. We're aligning with compliance and due diligence acts, etc. Question open for both of you. How important is it for competitors and vertical industries to actually come together and collaborate with discussions like that? And I'll ask, if you don't mind, I'll ask Elouise.
Well, every enterprise likes to think that they're a special flower and they have something that's unique, and that may or may not be true. But when it comes to suppliers, your suppliers, if we take all the telecoms, there's a large overlap. So, and you take pharma, you take the top 10 pharma companies and you overlap the suppliers, there's not that much variation. So we should all be collaborating on this stuff, especially if you're going to take like risk questionnaires. Why should pharma company 1 send out a risk questionnaire to all the suppliers, and then the pharma company 2 do the same thing with slightly worded different wording questions? It's like, why are we doing that? Because collectively we should do that. And that's why I think solutions like this, where we can bring that together, that's just a smarter way of working.
And from your side?
Yeah, I love your unique flower example. I think I might use that when I go back. But yeah, so I think in terms of the digital strategies of companies, we need to make strong decisions and I suppose learn to say no to certain people that are driving things a direction that we may not want. We need that standardization. It's a benefit for companies. It's for a benefit of different industries. If you take diversity and the carbon emissions side, so like, there needs to be strong decisions. We need to probably learn to say no in some examples and articulate, why this is a benefit for the companies, but the industry as well.
Perfect. That's a great question. I'm going to ask one more question for both of you, and then I'd like to give it to the audience as well, because I think this is a real collaborative discussion, and that's really what I want it to be. It's not about selling TYS at all. It's really for me as a supplier, as a buyer, and also as a partner to other organisations. It's just how we really do need to collaborate further. A challenge for you, Elouise, especially, you've just written another book, which I can't wait to get a podcast of. I'm going to do the podcast rather than anything else. What's the challenge for procurement or sourcing today? And where do we, as an organisation, or any of our partners here in the room, need to move forward to with?
I think the challenge, and this is why I like BTS so much, is the people. It's and specifically the digital competency. And I was stalking them when you were doing that week. It's like, wow, look at that. Because, and it gets to the concepts I was talking earlier. We have to be able to, well, let me just pause for a second. Everybody gets to take the journey. I believe everybody can take the journey. There's a bus or a train going to the destination, to the North Star. I want to give everybody a ticket. Now, not everybody's going to take the ticket. Not everybody's going to get on the bus. But we should all have the opportunity, and there's plenty of work to go around. And I think the biggest thing is upskilling the people, especially around digital tools.
All right. And Dermot?
Yeah, just looking at the clock, I totally agree. It's the talent. It's being clear what is the skills we want in our job descriptions.
Yeah.
That allows us to develop our learning plans as well, and then hopefully we'll receive results in, I suppose, the adoption of the tool. So totally agree. It's not an easy task. Obviously, the retention aspect is really key. I think we're in an employee-centric market today, so there's employers don't have as much skin in the game as maybe in years gone by. So that's really important.
I think I'm going to add my note on that, and that's great because, we all talk about AI, and it is a massive buzzword as AML, but we also need to think of HI as well, and, what is that human element to it? Where is their role? How do they integrate and collaborate within the network? And that's something that's, for me is a challenge, because everybody's saying, Michelle, you got to have AI. Well, yeah, AI is really good, but you've got to synergize that AI with actually the problem, and that probably comes from the human element as well. I'd really like to open it. I hope you can see the opportunities there are with collaboration. For me, it's extremely important that we discuss and we have open dialogue and conversation, and I certainly want to have that with everybody here today. I'd love to know if anybody's got any questions, preferably not for me, but preferably for one of those two. Yeah, perfect. I think there's a mic just coming here. Now, remember what I said, it's not for me.
Oh,
You go there.
So I have that's
quite loud.
All right. I have a question to Diarmuid. I'm a big fan of distributed ledger technology, and there are always these hypes and ups and downs, and probably sometimes in all these kinds of blockchain discussions, people are quite reluctant to jump on the bandwagon and on the train, especially maybe after the last FTX scandals. So how do you really convince your suppliers, and what kind of systems are on your backbone in terms of interoperability? Because probably we have Ethereum, we have the Bitcoin blockchain, some other quite well-established technologies are out there. So what is maybe the carrot that you are using to get everybody on the bandwagon?
Do you want me to answer that one?
No, I suppose. For us, it's multifold. I think if I just look back where we were a couple of years ago, we found it hard to actually articulate how long it took to actually onboard our suppliers. That's how bad it was. That is not good for BT in terms of how we want to do business. It disrupts our business, but also disrupts, to your point, why suppliers should work and can work with a company like BT, which is a huge company. So to your question, I think the sale is essentially the seamless integration and adoption within BT, but also that timeline to work for BT is obviously going to be shortened. I think in our case, we went from months, we're in 1 or 2 weeks now.
Yeah,
we want to push that further.
And I'll answer that question coming from that blockchain. And I know we're on time, and it's like the Oscar Awards, so I can see the time going down here. Give me 3 more minutes. So one of the questions I'd answer on that is, and I'm going back to collaboration, it's making sure that the supplier sees the opportunity for them as well. You shouldn't build any network, in my humble opinion, no network should be built unless you're looking at value proposition for everybody that touches that network environment. So if you can explain why there is value in a network within a blockchain, that's when it's going to be successful. Sorry, one more question coming from that side. Quick, because I've ran out of time, and he's looking at me with a finger in the air.
I'll try and speak very quickly.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of what you've talked about here is collaboration in terms of the consumer. So in this case, BT Source collaborating with their suppliers. But to be able to make this easier, the different vendors that create the networks that BT Source use to collaborate with their suppliers, presumably all need to communicate and have... You're never going to get different companies have the same roadmap because they're different companies, but they have to be moving in vaguely the same direction. How do you do that with separate entities with different goals? Sometimes, although everyone's friends in BT Garage, you might be competing in different areas. How do you actually bring that together?
So I'm going to answer it, and then I'm going to let Elouise, because DPW is a great example, right? So in DPW, most of the time, there's probably more vendors than there is actually people who's looking to purchase the products. That's your opportunity. We have got to continue open dialogue. The open dialogue to me is really important. So we've had conversations today with others that are in the same sort of competitive industry as us, and we sit down and we talk to them about strategy. We have got advisors like Elouise, we've got advisors like Cyril and Dermot in BT. It is about open dialogue. It is about discussion. It's about looking what's happening in their LinkedIn posts compared to our LinkedIn posts. We all need to have that opportunity to discuss what's happening and how we can all synergize and make it better. And I'll let you finish that.
I'll try on an optimistic note, because I'm not sure everybody survives just long term, because there's a lot out there, and I think eventually there has to be one record. If there's not one record, and whoever owns that record owns it, and so. But I do think collaboration is a big key, and I'm very big on open sharing, open data, and I think that makes all of us better. So. Yeah.
So I am not going to disrupt the stage much longer. I did promise I'd do some Irish dancing, but I'm not, because I think that would just make you all get very frightened and run away really quickly. I want you to go and have a really nice lunch, but I want to do one takeaway from it. So we keep talking about collaboration. I've made a lot of friends this week, whether that's because I've been dancing with them or going out for a glass of wine or giving a hug, or we're talking about history, or we're talking about strategic development. It is about synergy. We are all humans. We are all able to talk. Please do not take away from this anything other than discuss what's happening in the environment today, understand what your clients are actually looking for, and synergize it with other partners that are doing a job in another area better than you. Why should I go into that industry? I'm good at what we're good at. You're probably even better at what you're at. So please take that away. One last thing. There is an AI code, or QR code, that you're going to get as you walk out the door. It is a happy-go-lucky Irish theme. Please try and download it. There is a prize, and for me, forget the fact he's wearing all blacks. I will be wearing all green, because I'm not going to say it because I don't want to jinx it, but I think Ireland is close to winning the World Cup. So if you want to know more about Ireland, please come to my stand. Please take a QR code, and hopefully you'll have a really good session the rest of the week. Thank you very much.